Good day. Hello. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. It is so good to see you all on this beautiful day. Yes, I am back with a reading. As you know, we got to take care of those books. We got to get that information into our brains. So it's so good to see you all here with me. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can tune in to me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1, on Tuesdays at 4 for RBN Live, and the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. Now, if you have it, please give me a like. That actually is allowing me to be able to be more out there, to get the information more out there. And I'm doing these readings, and this is also helping people to gain some of this knowledge and really confirming a lot of what they know about the system in which we live in. So that's also very important. Also, thank you to all the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, as well as members, and anyone who sends me any type of mutual aid via the various platforms. Thank you so very much from the top and bottom of my heart. Also, just to let you guys know, I have to make sure I announce this more often. I also have a Substack. So if you guys go to my Substack, which is the link here that you can see, you guys can go to my Substack and also get notifications of whenever I go live, because I really don't trust the algorithm to give you guys the notifications in a prompt manner in order to let you guys know when I do go live. So be sure to also subscribe to my Substack. And thank you so very much. Now, one of the things we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be actually reading the autobiography of Assata Shakur. Once again, we're in chapter 5, part 2. This is going to be an interesting continuation of what we were discussing last time. One of the things that we were discussing was really how her dealings with the criminal justice system, or as some people like to say, the criminal injustice system that we have in this country. We all know, and a lot of you have seen the results or the video of the beating of Tyree Nichols that recently happened. And if you guys don't know Tyree Nichols, the story, it is heart-wrenching. Some people are saying that it is worse than the Rodney King beating. Some are saying it's like Emmett Till. And so the criminal justice system or injustice system, as it were, it doesn't work for any of us. And that is definitely true of Assata Shakur. So we're going to get into this. And we're going to be starting on page 91. So page 91 of Assata Shakur's autobiography. Let's get into it. She complained to the judge. My arm and hand had not yet fully recovered, and I was still partially paralyzed. Evelyn's remarks made the marshals more vicious. As the marshals carried me out of the courtroom, the spectators chanted, "Railroad! Railroad!" The judge ordered them removed. As I was being taken downstairs, I could hear the commotion. People were chanting and yelling and screaming. The marshals, I later found out, had beaten some of them. I sat in the bullpen. I lost in my thoughts. When they brought a white woman and man down the hallway and put the woman in the cell with me, I looked at her without much interest. "Assata," she said, "I'm glad to have finally met you, sorry. But I never thought it would be this way." I looked at her blankly. "My name is Nally Rosenstein. I was upstairs. I was one of the spectators in the courtroom when they started pushing and shoving and beating people." "What?" I said. "You're kidding." "No, we didn't move fast enough, so they arrested us." she said, referring to herself and the white man. What did they charge you with? Obstructing justice. After that, Kamal and I were banned from the courtroom. We were put into a freezing room next to the courtroom where a loudspeaker had been installed so we could listen to the trial. In the beginning, they slammed the door shut. At first, we wanted the door open because it was so cold and the warmth from the rest of the building helped. Then we began to enjoy the privacy. It was good to be able to talk to each other without someone looking down our throats, because we knew that sooner or later they would open the door and stare at us. We would open it. Let some heat in. It's freezing in here. The door stays closed. After a while, they locked it. One of the first things that Kamal and I had discussed was Islam. He had been a Muslim for some time and was deep into it. He was seriously trying to convince me to convert and become a practicing, active Muslim. I had always said that if I had any religion, it was Islam, but I had never practiced it. Because of Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm X, the Muslim influence over our struggle has been very strong, but it has always been difficult for me to accept the idea of an all-powerful, all-seeing, all-knowing God. And I reasoned, how could I be expected to love and worship a God whose master plan included the enslavement, torture, and murder of black people? Kamal argued that Islam was just a religion opposed to oppression. Oppression is worse than slaughter, he quoted from the Holy Quran. A true Muslim is a true revolutionary. There is no contradiction between being a Muslim and being a revolutionary. I didn't know much about it, but I agreed to seriously check it out. Muslim services were held regularly on Rikers Island, and Simba and I began to attend. Talking to Kamal was so good for me. Solitary had affected me really badly. I had closed up inside myself and had forgotten how to relate to an open way with people. We spent whole days laughing and talking and listening to courtroom madness in between. Each day we grew closer until one day it was clear to both of us that our relationship was changing. It was growing physical. We began to touch and hold each other, and each of us was like an oasis to each other. For a few days, the question of sex was there. Then one day, we talked about it. Surely it was possible. But I thought, the consequences. Pregnancy was certainly a possibility. I was facing life in prison. Kamal would also be in prison for a long time. The child would have no mother and no father. Kamal said, if you become pregnant and you have a child, the child will be taken care of. Our people will not let the child grow up like a weed. I thought about it. That was true, but the child would suffer. All of our children suffer, Kamal said. We can't guarantee our child a future in a world like this. Struggling is the only guarantee our child won't ever have for a future. You may never have another chance to have a child. I had to think, I told him. My mind was screaming. Who would take care of my baby? I thought about what Simba had said about our children being our hope and our future. I had never wanted a child. Since I was a teenager, I always said that the world was too horrible to bring another human being into. And a black child, we see our children frustrated at best, noses pressed against windows looking in, and at worst, we see them die from drugs or oppression, shot down by police, or wasted away in jail. My head was swimming. What had my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother thought when they brought their babies into this world? What had my ancestors thought when they brought their babies into this world, only to see them flogged and raped, bought and sold? I thought, how many black children are separated from their parents? How many grow up with their grandmothers and grandfathers? Didn't I stay with my grandparents until my mother had finished school and was on her feet? I remember all the discussions I had had. I'm a revolutionary, I had said. I don't have time to sit home and make no babies. Do you think that you're a machine? My brother had asked me. Do you think you were put on this earth to fight and nothing else? I thought about what Zayd had told me, always told me. While you're alive, girl, you better live. I am about life, I said to myself. I'm going to live as hard as I can and as full as I can until I die. And I am not letting these parasites, these oppressors, these greedy, racist swine make me kill my children in my mind before they're even born. And I am going to live and I am going to love Kamal. And if a child comes from that union, I am going to rejoice because our children are our futures. And I believe in the future and in the strength and righteousness of our struggle. I was ready for whatever happened. I relaxed and let nature take its course. That's something that's very interesting, though. There's a lot of us that stop and think about having kids in this world. But the thing is, if we stop having kids, we could leave this world to them inculcating this decrepit ideology of the system into their kids with nobody to fight the future generations. And on top of that, we could be teaching healers. We could be raising healers. We could be raising teachers. We could be raising soldiers to fight in this war against oppression. I think that's really important. I said this to one of my friends, and I even said this actually in my stream of consciousness in my Substack. The purpose of life is to live it. A lot of times people think, what is the purpose of life? Very simple, actually. It's not that hard. Live. And if you're not thriving, you work like hell to get to a point where you can thrive. And if you can't get to a point where you can thrive, along with the rest of our brothers and sisters and siblings around the world, well, you create new generations so that they push, so that everyone can thrive, so that there's equality, equity, and an egalitarian society so that everybody can truly live a life that is really worth living. You got to live. And people who are working their behinds off for a true revolution that we can actually have a thriving life, even they have to take breaks. Even they have to center themselves and de-stress. They have to chill. You have to chill from time to time. You can't have this all on your shoulders. I was talking about this to Rome recently. You can't have it all on your shoulders. It's not fair to you to do it. And as leftists, socialists, communists, the revolution also has to be a collective act. Thriving and pushing for a future where all of us thrive also has to be done by a collective act, a collective resistance to individuality. So, yeah. When something important was happening in the courtroom, we listened. But usually, whatever whatever was happening droned on in boring chatter, and it mattered to nothing. Lawyers have a habit of turning 10 words into 100 and saying nothing more in the process. The trial was like something out of some playwright's imagination. We called it the vaudeville show. Evelyn and Bob, after registering their daily protests, sat mute. The judge raved and ranted. The pigs barked like vicious dogs. The witnesses lied like crazy. The jurors, who had been picked solely by the prosecution, looked and listened expressionlessly. There were a couple of black jurors, and although we held little hope we would be acquitted, we placed a microscopic hope we did have in the black jurors. Even though we had presented no evidence, even though we had presented no defense, had not participated in the trial, we thought that there was a slim chance they might not go along with the program. Black people are generally not as brainwashed as white people when it comes to so-called systems of justice. The whole court process began to take its toll on me. Half the time I wasn't eating because they usually serve pork for lunch and sometimes they have pork for dinner. Breakfast was out of the question. I can never figure out what they gave us. I called it monster stew. I was always freezing and didn't have a coat. My mother had bought me one, but I had given it to Simba. She was pregnant and needed it more than I did. One night, when I returned from court, I began to feel awful, like a knife was stabbing me in my side. I could hardly breathe. When the prison doctor and the diagnosis was pleurisy, pleurisy, and the judge learned I was sick and unable to come to court, he had a fit. He had gotten sick just to delay the trial. The next time I saw the prison doctor, he was nervous and shook up. They keep calling me about you, he said. They want you back in court right away. They want to know how fast I can have you back in the courtroom. Who keeps calling you? I asked. Everybody, people. I got to get you back in court as soon as possible. And that's exactly what he did. Every day they brought us into the courtroom. And every day, as soon as the jury came in, we began to tell them what was happening, that we were being forced to trial without being given time to prepare a defense. And every day, the judge ordered us removed from the courtroom and cited us for contempt. It was comical. What are you going to do? I would ask them. I thought I had been cited for contempt for the 100th time. Put me in jail? Lock me up? One day, when the judge had been particularly crazy and the marshals had been particularly brutal, Evelyn just couldn't take it anymore. I'm not going to sit here and watch this spectacle, she said. If you won't permit me to defend my client, there's no purpose in me being here. And with that, she got up and started to leave. Get back in here, the judge yelled. I order you to get back in here and sit down. Evelyn kept walking. If you don't come back and sit down, I'm citing you for contempt. Evelyn walked out of the courtroom. The judge cited her for contempt. In 1975, after all appeals, including the Supreme Court of the United States, were denied, she served a 10-day sentence in maximum security at the Westchester County Jail for Women. The trial soon ended and we waited patiently for the verdict. Evelyn and Bob gave us lectures. Expect nothing but the worst. There's a chance, but it's slim. Come on, I waited for the conviction. 1 day of jury deliberation passed. 2 days passed. The jury seemed to be taking forever. We wondered what was taking them so long. It was an open and shut case. We had cross-examined no witnesses, presented no defense. Come on, I spent the time tenderly savoring our last moments together. The next morning, Evelyn and Bob came in, grinning. It's a hung jury, they giggled. Giglio-Hardy is fit to be tied. They're going to call us in the court in a few minutes. We just thought we'd come in and give you the good news. 10 minutes later, we were in the courtroom. The judge was grimly thanking and dismissing the jury. The marshals looked like they wanted to fight. The prosecutor looked like he wanted to cry. We found out later that the lone black juror had refused to convict us. He had heard us. He looked on Giglio-Hardy's face, gave me great pleasure. I looked at him and gave him my most meaningful smile. His face turned red and he looked away. Afterward, we met with the lawyers. We were still giddy and in a state of shock. What does this mean? Are they going to try us again? They're going to try you again, and right away, Evelyn told us. The new trial will begin on Monday. Kamal and I looked at each other. We were sick of this case. We were ecstatic that we were going to have one more time together. Are we going to have the same judge? No, Bob said. They got to assign to a new judge. Evelyn was caught up in our gleeful mood, but as soon as usual, she was business first. We've got to come up with a trial strategy. Sitting in that courtroom day after day, watching that fiasco enabled us to do one thing. We were able to see and analyze their case. I feel that now we're ready to go to trial. They don't have a case, Bob said. I don't know how they got an indictment. We know, Kamal and I said. Their case is utterly absurd, Evelyn said. We know, Kamal and I droned in. Their witnesses are as phony as $3 bills, Evelyn said. We know. They don't have one piece of physical evidence, Evelyn ranted. No photographs, no fingerprints, no witnesses, no nothing. We know, Kamal and I chanted in unison. They couldn't possibly have any evidence, I said. We weren't there. Well, I know that, Evelyn said indignantly. That's not the point. Bob and Kamal looked perplexed. Evelyn and I looked at each other and smiled knowingly. We have found out in New Jersey how evidence could appear out of nowhere and other evidence disappear. Evelyn and I had a very close relationship. We loved each other intensely, and we got along wonderfully. Usually. But when we argue or disagree, it's awful. We are both outraged at that the other one doesn't agree or see our point, and we feel betrayed and furious. And neither of us had the mildest temper in the world. Add to that a tremendous pressure we were both under, and you have the recipe for fireworks. During one of our strategy meetings, Evan and I locked horns. Try as we might, we couldn't reach any kind of agreement. After a while, we weren't even communicating. It became a matter of who had the last word and the final decision. I'm the lawyer, she yelled. I know what I'm doing, and if you aren't going to listen to me, then what's the point of having me defend you? I'm the client, I yelled back. I'm the one who's going to do 25 years in prison if you're wrong. What are you saying? Is that you don't trust my judgment? Evelyn said. Our argument was for bad to worse. After a while, we were saying all kinds of things we didn't mean to each other. I don't need this shit, Evelyn stormed. What the hell do I need to defend you for? You haven't got 1 ounce of sense. You don't have to defend me if you don't want to, I responded. Don't do me any favors. You need all the favors you can get, Evelyn countered. Well, I don't need them from you. I can defend my damn self as well as you can. I like to see you try it. I don't need this mess. I will. I don't need you either. Damn. Well, go ahead and defend your stupid self then, Evelyn screamed. I will! After the argument, I was tired and blank. All the tension had drained out of my body. I was still mad, but I was sorry too. Evelyn was probably right, and I was probably crazy. So hard working with someone who is so close to you. It was like having your mother or your wife or your husband as your lawyer. It's real hard to be objective. Personal stuff sometimes gets in the way. I didn't know whether I was being a sane adult or a rebellious child. Next time we came into court, I could see right away that Evelyn was still angry with me. I fully intended to try to make up, but her cold manner made me draw back and get mad all over again. Is your decision still the same? She asked coldly. Yes, I responded icily. Judge, she told the new judge, I wish to be relieved from this case. Ms. Shakur wishes to retain another lawyer. Is this true? The judge asked me. Yes, I want to defend myself. A little while later, she was off the case. As I sat in the bullpen feeling stupid and stubborn, the guard brought in a public defender. Gagliardi had assigned him because he didn't like the way Evelyn was behaving. I told him I didn't want him to represent me, that I was representing myself. The judge had assigned him to my case. What did you do before you were a public defender? He told me that once upon a time that he had been a prosecutor. That was the end of that conversation. I would rather have an alligator for a lawyer. I didn't even remember his name, but he sat through both trials as my supposed lawyer, even though I refused to even speak to him. Since I was now defending myself, I was entitled to a lawyer as an advisor. Everyone suggested lawyers, but most of them were white leftists. I wanted, if at all possible, a black woman. Not just any black woman lawyer, but someone who was in tune with the politics of black liberation struggle. One of the names given to me was Florence Kennedy. She was a black lawyer who was very active in the women's movement, well known in speaking circuit from coast to coast, and more renowned as a feminist and political activist than a lawyer. She fit the bill perfectly. She was just what I wanted. Some argued against her. But Assata, they said, she's not a trial lawyer. Flo is not a criminal lawyer. You need both. Someone who can give you sound advice. I was unmoved by their arguments. She's wild. She's flamboyant and eccentric. She might scare the jury. She can't be any wilder than this case is, I countered. Besides, I don't need a criminal lawyer because this isn't a criminal case. I need a political lawyer. I was in a wild mood and I was determined to handle the case the way I saw fit. I wasn't expecting any such thing as justice. This case was like something out of the Twilight Zone, and I was convinced I couldn't be treated like a normal run-of-the-mill criminal trial. I was determined to use this case to expose the deceit and crookedness of the government. A meeting between Flo and me was arranged. Flo warned me over and over that her lack of trial experience. You know, darling, I haven't been inside a courtroom to try a case in years. I don't care, I said. You've been out in the world. You know what reality is, and that's enough. Flo agreed to be my legal advisor, and I was ready to go to trial. Oh boy. That's the end of chapter 5. Man, sometimes, when you're comrades with somebody You have disagreements. It happens in all groups. Sure, it happened in the Black Panthers. Sure, it happened in Southern Christian Leadership Conference with Martin Luther King Jr. and the members there. Sure, it happened in the Young Patriots, Young Lords. I had Aquila Inai from the African People's Socialist Party. They probably had their disagreements, and it happens in RBN. But there are times where, they make it work. We make it work. And this system that we're trying to push through, that we're trying to fight against, they make the conditions very hard to deal with. So because of that, we go through drama sometimes. Even Assata Shakur went through it. You're going to go through trials and tribulations with your comrades. And a lot of times it's because, especially when you're fighting against the system, you're trying to fight in the most best way you possibly can. You're trying to do it at the optimum way. And there's stylistic differences between you, but it is important to know that even though there are those differences, deep in everybody's heart, they care. They care about the people. They want to create a better world. They want you to have equality, equity, and justice. They want me to have equity, equality, and justice. And so give grace to your comrades and let them know you love them, because that's important too. Because this system is very unloving. I tell you, this system is designed to make you hate people. Loving is a rebellious act through and through. Be rebellious and try to keep a healthy mental state. Being healthy, both mentally and physically, is also an act of rebellion. Healthy relationships with your comrades is an act of rebellion. So rebel. Do the best you possibly can. Because guess what? We're all we got, baby. And that's that. Thanks for being with me on the reading of Assata Shakur. Next time we go into the book, we'll be going on chapter 6 on page 99, baby. Page 99, chapter 6, and Assata Shakur's Autobiography. And I'll be getting into the last part of Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti, and I can't wait to finish this book with you guys. That's going to be monumental. This will be another book that I get to finish. I'm excited. Aren't you excited? Can't wait. Did you subscribe? Are you subscribed to my channel? Go ahead. That little red box down there, right down here. Go ahead. Give it a old clickety-click. Clickety-clack. If you guys actually like the content, as well as like the stream, so that this actually gets out there, so that people can also consume this as well. I want to thank you guys as well. Thanks to all the patrons on Patreon, Coffee, and the members. You guys can see the patrons on Patreon and Coffee scrolling down here. And thank you to all the members. And thank you to anybody who sends me mutual aid. Kind of need some more mutual aid to speak, but that's a whole nother story. But what are you going to do? This system is designed to make you suffer, you know? But thank you so very much to everybody, because you guys have continuously helped me to keep sustained despite the way the system is continuously trying to make it so that you give up. Keeping going, getting up again over and over is also an act of rebellion because they want you to give up. Don't do it. Don't do it at all. Don't give up to these people, these oligarchs, these stenographers for the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex. Don't give up to them. They will not matter when the history books are written. They will be the antagonist. They will be the bad guy when history is written. And you, yes, you will be the hero. Because you are. Because you're trying to make it into a more better society for all, not just some. That's the power you have. And I'm proud of you for doing so. So, as I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Reading is fundamental. So, if you can read, whether that's audiobooks, physical books, ebooks, or just listening to me, reading is fundamental. I love you. Deuces. Oh, and mwah, forehead kisses to every single one of you. Bye.